Hello there, this is Instructor Paul, and in this lecture, we're going to talk about transferring FSMO or FSMO roles. Now, FSMO stands for Flexible Single Master Operation. And like you know, there's 5 FSMO roles. There's the schema role, domain naming role, the RID role, PDC emulator role, and there's the infrastructure role. Now, FSMO role, by definition, is a role that is only completed by a single server in the domain. Sometimes you're going to need to transfer these roles between different servers, and I want to prepare you for that so you're able to do this. Now, an example of when you'd want to transfer one of these roles is maybe you're taking a server offline, and right before you take it offline, you transfer the role to another server. For example, if you had a server 2003 domain controller, you could demote it, but if you decided to transfer the roles ahead of time, you'd want to transfer those FSMO roles to the new domain controller that's going to take its place. Okay, so another reason you might want to transfer roles is if you just don't want to have a single point of failure. So by default, our one domain controller, ITFDC01, is going to hold all the server roles. Now, when we join another domain controller to the domain, we could transfer some of those roles to that domain controller, and we're going to do that in this lecture. So I'm not going to be transferring all of the roles, and I want to give you a warning that if you're in a production environment, you want to be very, very careful when you're doing this, because you could potentially cause issues if there's a failed transfer. So you only want to do this if you actually have a need to do so. Okay, so if everything's working good and you don't feel like you need to do it, I would say just don't transfer the roles. But if you want to prepare for having failover or just not having your whole domain go down because one server goes down, then this is the way that you do it. Or if a server crashes, say you have a server that's holding the schema role and it crashes, just completely dies, you're going to need to seize that role, and it's the same process. So this is important for you to know, but it's not something you want to do every day or just for fun. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is learn how to transfer the schema role. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to have to register a DLL. So let's click the start button in the bottom left corner, and we're going to type in regsvr32. And it's the DLL we're going to register is schmmmgmt.dll. So again, that's schmmmgmt.dll, and we'll press enter. Okay, so the registration of this DLL succeeded. So that's good. So now we'll click OK. And now we're going to open the Microsoft Management Console, also known as MMC. So again, we're going to click the start button in the lower left corner, and we're going to type in MMC. And we can see that this pops up right away. So we'll go ahead and left click on this. And now we need to add the schema snap-in. So we can do this by either hitting File, Add, Remove, Snap-in, or we can press left control on M. I don't think it matters if you hit left control or right control. So now what we're looking for is the Active Directory schema snap-in, and we can see that's listed right here. Now you won't see this if you don't register that DLL, and that's why we did that. So we're going to click Add, and we'll click OK. Okay, so we're going to expand this Active Directory schema here. And the first thing that we need to do or keep in mind when we're transferring a role is that we need to be on the target domain controller, the target server, before we can transfer the role. So if I right click on the server and I say Operations Masters, we can see that the current schema master, which is online, is ITFDC01. Now, if we wanted to transfer it, we could click change, but it says we're going to change it to ITFDC01, which is already the server. The way that you get around this is click close. We're going to right click and we're going to say change Active Directory domain controller. And we're going to select ITFDC02. We'll click OK. Okay, so it says Active Directory snap-in is not connected to the Operations Masters. You will not be able to perform blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's fine. We're just going to click OK. Now we're going to right click on this again and we're going to say Operations Masters. And now we can click change and change this from the ITFDC01 to the ITFDC02. Now I'm not going to change this role, but this is how you would do it. You click the change button and then it'll update. Now we are going to change some of the roles so you'll see how it's done, but I'm not going to do that on this. So I'm just going to click close. And I'm going to close out of this snap-in. We'll say, no, we don't want to save this. Okay, so now let's talk about changing the RID, PCD, or the infrastructure roles. And we can do that from Active Directory users and computers. So if we select Tools in the top right corner, we can say Active Directory users and computers here. And here's the console. It is popped open. So what I'm going to do is maximize the screen here. And under itflee.com, we can right click and choose Operation Masters. But remember, we need to change the domain controller first. So we're going to click up here and we're going to say change domain controller. and we'll select ITFDC02. All right, so now what we're going to do is right click on itfleet.com and we're going to say Operation Masters. And now we can change the RID, the PDC, or the infrastructure roles. And we can also see a description of what the role does. It's really brief and it doesn't give you a whole lot of information. But let's go ahead and change the infrastructure from ITFDC01 to ITFDC02. So what we're going to do is click Change. And it says, are you sure you want to transfer the role? We'll click Yes. And it says the Operation Masters role was successfully transferred. So now we can see the Operation Masters is ITFDC02. And we can, in theory, do that for all these other roles, but I'm not going to do that. So the last role that we haven't talked about yet is a domain naming master role. So the way we can transfer that role is under Tools, we can select Active Directory, Domains, and Trusts. And right here, we can see right away we have itfleet.com and we are on the ITFDC01 server. So we're going to right click, we're going to say Change Active Directory Domain Controller. We'll select ITFDC02. We'll click OK. So we're going to right click on this and we can see Operations Master. So if I click on this, we can now change the Operations Master for the Domain Naming Operations Master. Okay, so we can click Change and we can swap that over to this domain controller. All right, so that is how you transfer the 5 FSMO roles within Active Directory. Now, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. I sure did enjoy making it for you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next lecture.